Rome, May 28, 1606. A street fight over a wager, possibly a tennis match, possibly something more personal. The record is incomplete on the cause. The record is very complete on the result. A man named Ranuccio Tomasoni lies dead. The man who killed him is already running. His name is Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio. He is 34 years old. He is the most talked about painter in the city. And as of tonight, he is a fugitive with a capital sentence, a bando capitale, meaning any citizen of the Papal States is legally permitted to kill him on sight. To understand why the death sentence mattered, why it wasn't simply swept aside for a celebrated artist, you have to understand what Caravaggio was and what he wasn't. He was not a court painter. He was not a gentleman. He was a brawler, a swordsman, and a tenant who left apartments trashed and landlords furious. He had prior arrests, a record of street altercations, a police deposition in which a woman testified he had thrown a plate of artichokes at her. These are documented, these are real, the artichokes are real, and yet, in the churches of Rome, his paintings stopped people cold. That particular quality of light, a single shaft cutting through absolute darkness, landing on a face, a hand, a wound, had never been done quite like that before. His contemporaries argued about whether he was a genius or a scandal. Several concluded he was both. The church kept commissioning him. Powerful cardinals competed to own his work. And then came the night of May 28th, and all of that patronage became suddenly complicated. Here is what the documents confirm. On that May evening in 1606, a brawl broke out in the Campo Marzio district of Rome involving Caravaggio, his companions, and a group that included Ranuccio Tomasoni. Tomasoni died of a wound to the upper thigh, almost certainly severing the femoral artery. Caravaggio was wounded too. He fled the city that same night. A bando capitale, a formal capital sentence, was issued against him by the papal authorities. It named him. It was enforceable. That part is documented in the Roman judicial record, which still exists. Now here is where the legend begins to diverge from the fact. Some later accounts described the fight as a duel over a woman. Others said it was a gambling debt. One theory proposed by modern scholars suggests Tomasoni's emasculation, not merely his death, was the intended outcome, a ritualized punishment in the criminal underworld of the time. That theory is speculative. It is argued in the scholarly literature. It is not proven. What is proven is this: a man died, a sentence was passed, and Caravaggio ran south. Naples in 1606 was not part of the Papal States. It was Spanish-controlled territory. The bando capitale could not reach him there, not legally, at any rate. Caravaggio had connections, he had patrons. The Colonna family, one of Rome's most powerful aristocratic dynasties, had long supported his career. Their protection, according to scholars, helped smooth his passage south. In Naples, he was not hiding in an attic, he was working. Almost immediately, the commissions came. The Piemonte della Misericordia, a charitable institution, hired him to paint an altarpiece for their new church. The result was the 7 Works of Mercy. 7 acts of Christian charity compressed into a single scene so crowded and so alive it barely fits its own canvas. Painted in 1607, still hanging in Naples today. In the same year, he produced 2 other major works for Neapolitan patrons. 3 large-scale paintings in roughly 12 months, while technically a condemned fugitive. That is not legend. That is the provenance record. Man with a death sentence needs more than geography. He needs a title. Specifically, he needs a title that comes with diplomatic immunity. This was Caravaggio's calculation when he sailed for Malta in 1607. The Knights of Malta, formerly the Order of St. John, were one of the most prestigious military and religious institutions in Christendom. A knighthood from them would, in theory, put him beyond the reach of a Roman capital sentence. He carried letters of introduction. He carried his brushes, and he immediately began painting portraits of the Order's Grand Master aloft de Wignacourt. We know this because those portraits survive. One hangs in the Louvre. Caravaggio was made a Knight of Malta in 1608, a remarkable honor for a working painter, documented in the Order's records. He also painted, during this period, one of the largest and arguably most devastating paintings of his career, the beheading of St. John the Baptist. It is the only work Caravaggio ever signed. He hid his signature inside a painted rivulet of the Baptist's blood. That detail is documented. Make of it what you will. It lasted approximately 4 months. In late 1608, Caravaggio was imprisoned in Malta. The reason in the Order's records is given as foul and filthy conduct, deliberately vague. Modern scholars have proposed a violent assault on a Knight of Justice, which would have been a serious breach of the Order's rules. That specific accusation is scholarly inference from the disciplinary severity. The exact offense in the documents remains opaque. What is not opaque? Caravaggio escaped from the Order's fortified prison. The prison was a castle. He escaped from a castle. He made it to a boat. He reached Sicily. The Order of Malta, in his absence, formally expelled him from their ranks, stripping the knighthood that was supposed to protect him. He was now, again, a fugitive. He had managed to accumulate a second institutional disgrace on top of the original capital sentence. In Sicily, he moved between cities, Syracuse, Messina, Palermo, staying nowhere long enough to become a target. The paintings kept coming, each one darker, each face more ravaged. Scholars have noted a recurring motif in works from this period: decapitated heads, often rendered with what appears to be Caravaggio's own features. This is interpretation. It is widely held interpretation, but interpretation nonetheless. By 1609, Caravaggio was back in Naples, waiting. He had powerful friends still working the machinery of Roman patronage on his behalf. Cardinal Scipione Borghese, the Pope's nephew, one of the great collectors of the age, was interested in securing a pardon. In exchange for paintings, as was customary, the negotiation was real, the pardon appeared to be coming. And then in October 1609, something happened in Naples. Caravaggio was attacked outside an inn, the Osteria del Siriglio, and severely wounded in the face. Whether this was a hired assault by enemies of the Tomasoni family, or a random robbery, or something else entirely, is not established in any document that survives. It is not known. What is known is that a report reached Rome claiming he was dead. The report was premature. He recovered enough to paint. He produced in these final months works of extraordinary and almost unbearable intensity. The Salome with the head of John the Baptist, John's severed head bearing what many scholars read as Caravaggio's likeness, may date from this period. He was preparing to sail to Rome with paintings intended as gifts to facilitate his pardon. In July 1610, Caravaggio boarded a boat heading north along the Tyrrhenian coast. He had paintings with him, works intended for Cardinal Borghese, the currency of his pardon. What happened next is, like so much of his life, documented at the edges and obscure at the center. The boat stopped at the small coastal settlement of Parlo near Civitavecchia. Caravaggio was detained, possibly mistaken for someone else, possibly correctly identified. He was released. But when he was released, the boat had gone. The paintings were on the boat. He made his way overland in July heat to the garrison town of Porto Ercole, Spanish territory, therefore technically safe. He died there. The death is registered. The date given is July 18, 1610. He was 38 years old. The cause recorded in contemporary sources is fever. Modern medical historians have proposed lead poisoning. He used lead-based white paint obsessively, or syphilis, or wound infection from the Naples assault. None of these is definitively established. The fever notation is what we have. As for the paintings left on the boat, some were eventually delivered to Borghese. Some may have been lost. The pardon, by some accounts, had already been issued in Rome before he died. He may never have known. That is documented conjecture, meaning the pardon document exists, but whether news of it reached him before his death is not confirmed. He died in Porto Ercole. The paintings survived. That seems, somehow, exactly right. The 4 years after the killing, Naples, Malta, Sicily, Naples again, and a road that ended at Porto Ercole produced work that still unsettles people. Not because it is violent, though it often is, because it is honest about something that most art of the period preferred to decorate around. Suffering is unbeautiful. Grace is not guaranteed. The light, when it comes from somewhere you can't see, and it illuminates only part of the face. Caravaggio had no school, no workshop of note. He taught by example, which means his example is still being absorbed, 4 centuries later. The Bando Capitale was never formally lifted in his lifetime, as far as the surviving record shows. He painted 37 years' worth of ambition into 38 years of life, with the last 4 years spent looking over his shoulder. The question the case leaves open is not really about art. It's about what we are willing to forgive, and for what price. Ranuccio Tomasoni is buried in Rome. Caravaggio is buried in Porto Ercole, though the exact location of his grave was only proposed, not confirmed, by a research team in 2010 using bone analysis. Even his grave kept its secrets. So I'll ask you this: if the pardon had arrived in time, if Caravaggio had made it back to Rome and lived another 20 years, would the darkness in the paintings have been the same? Or was the fugitive the artist?